Hello, my name is Andy Liles. I am a coach with a background in education of around 20 years. I have founded my own organisation called Andy Liles Coaching, and I am looking to coach young people and around the young person with the adults that support them. And I'm speaking today with Eldon. Hello, Eldon.
Hi, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Tell me about yourself.
Good. So I am into education as well. I've been teaching for around or just over 15 years, and I'm recently I started my own tutoring business, and I'm looking to get into academic coaching as well. More so than even the tutoring. But yeah, I started off in computer information systems in that field, and then I switched over to music, and I did my PhD in music education. And interestingly, though, my tutoring is in math and information technology. But I'm having fun with that. I'm having fun with that, and looking forward to getting into more academic coaching. Yeah.
Fantastic. And coaching, getting into education is a really exciting development. We have spoken in the past ourselves about how coaching can have a big impact on teaching and learning, but also on the development of young people. So, for the audience that we're speaking to, can you tell them about what coaching is?
So coaching, people ask that question. What is coaching? When I use that term, what do you mean by academic coaching? And I remember trying to explain it to one guy, and he said at the end of it, he said, that sounds deep and it sounds expensive." And I just had a good chat. I had a good laugh at that. But coaching is really about working with the student in a holistic way to help them to build on their strengths and to improve on the areas where they have challenges. And it's really through a lot of questioning, having that kind of open conversation, where the coach asks questions more so than trying to give answers or to try or more so than trying to prescribe solutions that the coach thinks might work. And so it's more of asking the student those questions that will lead them to open different ways of thinking, explore different paths, and trying to see what might work better than what was happening before. So even though it might have some overlap with some other things like guidance counseling and so on and so forth, coaching is more about that questioning and asking the student what they think might work for them. Where are you now? And how do you see this working? If you make that decision, how do you see that working or not working? Getting them to really listen to themselves and to find out what their thought process is.
Hmm. I
I don't
like.
know if your take of it is, what was your take on
No, I,
on
I,
that?
I, I like what you said about them listening to themselves, and it's for me sort of understanding how the role of the student is different, and how the role of
Right.
the coach compared to maybe a teacher or a tutor is different. That actually the student in coaching is in a lot more control of the conversation because they've got the answers themselves. Um, they feel in more control and they can take the conversation in their direction. And the the coach is a little bit like a conductor who just can set can set the tempo by asking the questions and the question that feels right because they are actually listening to the student rather than the student just listening to the coach. What do you what is your take on on the relationship between the coach and the student and the roles of the student and the coach?
Well, actually, it's quite interesting that you mentioned the word conductor or mentioned the term conducting because that's what I do, and as you bring that up, what's interesting about it is as a conductor, it's not about you always. Some people think that conducting is or it can be viewed as like the last great dictatorship. I say do this now and that's when you do it. Um, but it's not so much about that because as a conductor, there's only so much because you're still human. and there's only so much you can do and pay attention to at one point in time. And so it may not always be the most obvious thing, but those persons who are in the ensemble, whether it's an instrumental one or a vocal one, the people in the ensemble also have a responsibility. There's some things that you do, because even like I was in a rehearsal this weekend, and I remember telling the ensemble members, this particular thing you are going to be responsible for. So we talk about it, we discuss it. Here's what that vision is, and now what's your responsibility in helping to make that vision come true? And it's sort of the same thing with coaching. So the coach is there, the conversation is really led by the student, depending on what their goals are and what they want to get out of the session, and where they want to go, beyond the session. But the coach has his or her part to play, but then the student is responsible for certain things as well. So that idea of the conducting that really that made me smile. But it's true. So yeah, there's responsibility on both parts. So the student certainly has to, they're being asked the questions, but the responsibility rests with them as to how far this thing goes, and of course how much they buy into it in terms of their own progress and so on.
Yeah, it's a really high level of accountability, and that's, I suppose we've spoken about traditional teaching, how that accountability is almost taken away from students, because it's the teacher who's in control of the teaching, and the students have to take it in whatever way that the teacher delivers it. And that takes away agency. It can take away a sense of responsibility, a sense of ownership, and a sense of empowerment that I think coaching can reintroduce to young people. And I sense with the young people I work with that they are really hungry for feeling in control, feeling empowered, the interactivity that is coaching, as opposed to passive learning, or even just the passive act of mentoring where an expert gives information over to somebody else. And there's a time and there's a place for that, without a doubt. But I think coaching is so powerful because it gives young people, and anybody who is a coach, who is benefiting from coaching, the control to answer questions that help them learn and grow themselves. And I think that and the accountability are two of the most unique parts of the coaching process that make it so powerful. From your perspective, what else is unique about coaching that makes it increasingly sought after by many people?
I think it's I think one of the things that makes it almost intimidating is that you have this sense of where is this going to lead? Because it's not always a clear-cut path. Actually, there's really nothing clear-cut about coaching, So there's always this question of, what are we going to get out of this? Where is this going to lead? Because you can't always dictate where thoughts are going to go. You can't always dictate where conversation is going to go. We have a starting point, and we may have an intended ending point, but then what happens in between the points, and does the ending point even remain the same after that conversation and after thoughts begin to flow? And I think because of how we have been trained to think traditionally, because of going through the generations before and so on, and that whole idea of going to school, you get a job, you work in that one job 40 years, and then you retire. There's this stability thing. But now, life is not that sort of way anymore. That whole idea of stability, the idea of stability has changed. It's not that you learn this block of information, and that block of information takes you through life. Now you've got to learn and then unlearn and then relearn. And that's sort of where the stability is now. The stability is in remaining unstable, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And I think coaching is a very viable response to that, because coaching, again, from what I've said before, coaching is that it allows you that space to think and to listen to yourself, um, and it allows you to gives you the space to morph. You don't have to, feel like if I'm stuck in this one place, there are other things that I can think of. There are other ideas that I can, come up with. I am not just this one person who was, who came up to be in this box, and this box is where I have to live for the rest of my life. There are other things out there, that I could explore. So I think coaching is a great and a powerful tool in that, the way that life is now, a powerful tool and a powerful response to what's happening around us and how fast things are changing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I, I like what you say about not knowing where the conversation is going, and it always sounds like there's a parallel with that in the coaching conversation, and with the uncertainty that there is in the world, that there isn't the clear cut path in life because of how everything is changing. And it sounds a little bit like the contrast of improvisation in jazz, for instance, versus the total certainty of a classical performance, where it's all determined, it's figured out to the very note and to every part of it. And it sort of reminds me of the phrase of being comfortable in the unknown. And we've spoken before about how that being comfortable in the unknown is something that's quite difficult for older generations and parents of the young people that you're looking to support and help. So what is it about coaching that you would like to get over to adults and to older generations who might be more used to a secure life?
Wow. What would I like to get over? That just as scared or as scary as it sounds to them, it actually is for us. It's scary. I mean, I've never really met anyone who is like living necessarily for change. Like, every time something changes, they go, yeah, we're changing. That doesn't really happen. We're human. We like patterns. We like to be able to sit and figure out things. We like to be, in some ways, predictable. We like that sort of, here's what's happening next, and I'm accustomed to this, whatever that is. So that idea of warming up to change, it's scary, but recently in some of my thoughts, as far as change is concerned, I came up with a short statement about change, and that is just change is. It just is, and it's something that we have to learn to work with. It's something we have to learn to deal with. So, like we said earlier, people who were born in the 1990s probably have, and beyond, and later, 1990s up until now, have very little, a very small idea, or they don't really think of, I'm going to grow up and work at this particular job for 30, 40 years. That idea doesn't work now. I was talking to someone, it was one of my aunts, I think, I was talking to recently. And I was mentioning to her, she told me she worked at her job for 42 years. She worked for 42 years, but in there she changed jobs about 2 or 3 times. Both my parents were teachers, and they taught for 30 plus years. But I have an uncle who changed jobs. I lost count of how much jobs he had. So even in that age group, there were people who didn't stay, in one place, and now it's just that multiplied by 100 or how much ever it is. so parents and grandparents who hear their young people now talking about moving, and we're not certain what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be doing something, and they may not fully understand. Well, you said you're working, but I'm never seeing you like leaving well at home. Well, I'm working online. I'm working online. What is that? It's it's just a whole different way of thinking. And I can understand, of course, our parents' struggles with how that works. I mean, for me, seeing a 6 month old trying to connect, a charger to an iPad just kind of blows my mind. Like,
Yes.
why are you even trying that? At 6 months old, I was trying to figure out how to use soothers and stuff. You trying to plug in iPads. And, it just reminded me of a statement that technology is only technology if it wasn't there when you were born. So if they were, for me, I was born, when I was born, I saw cars. So a car for me is like, that's for these children who are being born now, they're being born into this cell phone, era. So for them, that's not technology. For us, it is. For them, it's not. It's a regular way of life. So it just calls for a lot of it calls for a shift in thinking. It calls for some tolerance. It calls for some education, I guess, if you want to call it that. But you basically just have to recognize things have changed and they will continue to change, and you just have to work with it. I don't know that there's any easy way around it. It's just changes.
It changes, undoubtedly. I spoke with somebody yesterday, and she made a really good observation that between two generations, the generation that's in school or at university now, and even the generation above it in their 20s, is the size of about 4 generations of time when you think about how much change there's been in the last 10, 20 years, that the world has changed completely by technology, by, I suppose, by geopolitics a little bit as well. And the children are growing up as almost very different or differently wired human beings compared to ourselves and older generations that, like you say, saw much of the technology that's ubiquitous in our lives come in the first place. So would you say that, because we've also spoken about how schools and the curriculum are struggling to keep up with the pace of the change in the world, so that schools are becoming, and the curriculums are becoming less and less relevant, what coaching can do to support young people in their studies, and what is coaching's place in education?
So I think coaching is in a position to really support what's happening, in school now as far as that curriculum is concerned. But I also do see that there is going to be a struggle with it because it almost feels like coaching goes totally opposite to how the traditional teaching, model is set up. And I can see a struggle there between, but I have this information that I need to give to the student. I have this content that I need to get them to learn for the test. And coaching is not like that. Coaching is not necessarily getting you to learn this information for the test. It's more of, what do you want to learn? Why do you want to learn it? Where do you see this taking you? Does it mean that content is not important? No. It just means that the student has to find a way to connect to this content and not just, be asked to gobble it up because I told you need to gobble it up.
Yeah.
And, and I guess it's sort of, again, the way things are now, especially with the rise in, because we haven't even mentioned this, the rise in AI with artificial intelligence and those things now taking over the content tasks.
Completely.
Like, now it's not, do I really need to know, for instance, do I really need to know my tables? Maybe yes, maybe no, but is it enough now to just know things?
Yeah.
Like everybody can go on Google the website and find just about information on just about anything. So is it really now just about knowing things, or is it more about knowing what to do with what you know? You know, and learning how to know things. It's a whole different shift, and so coaching can definitely help with that. But I do see it struggling with how it makes its way into the general classroom, how it makes its way into preparing teachers who are, pre-service teachers who are in training. I can see how how it might, there might be a struggle there. I can also see how it might be a struggle in assessments, because that's another issue. How do you assess a student in a coaching model? How does that impact standardized testing? Like, does everybody have to know exactly the same thing? I don't know. And then we have even in the workplace, we spend our time in schools teaching students to be independent. You need to be able to do this by yourself, for yourself, and then when you get into the workplace, it's okay, let's all collaborate. Well, and coaching can definitely help with either one, the collaborating or the individual work. But again, this the way it comes at the whole learning thing, which is sort of different from how it happens traditionally. Yeah, I can see how it helps.
Yeah.
Or can help, but then there's also this, you can also see how the struggle is going to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to take some time to get through that whole thing there.
No, without a doubt. In Barbados, you've mentioned some of the obstacles to coaching really becoming a part of the learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
What would you ideally like to say to anybody who's in a position to influence and make a change in terms of how those challenges can be overcome?
I think one for sure is going to take being open-minded. That's for sure. And it's going to take a whole lot of flexibility. I don't know how getting ready for it would be. I just know it's going to take the open-mindedness, it's going to take the flexibility, and it's going to take being willing to start with small things, because you can't start with a whole slew of stuff, but it's going to take that willingness to at least make a start. Again, I remember one of those quotes I have seen, that what was it, change, you only change when the pain of remaining the same becomes more than the pain of changing. Something to that effect. So I guess in some ways, it takes that, you have to become uncomfortable enough to want to get into another level of discomfort, because that's what change is really. Change is going to make you uncomfortable. And a lot of people are still, we still like to be comfortable. So it's going to take that some level of discomfort to get people to want to change in the first case. But I guess if we can show results of coaching, if those results can start to become more apparent, then that will definitely be helpful, in changing mindsets and so on. So again, yeah, it's going to take that small start. It's going to take being consistent with that start, and keep pushing for it and working with it, to start to get that wheel to turn. But yeah, it's it's going to take some work, but I think it can be done. It's just going to take that level of work. Yeah,
Certainly. And you you mentioned the impact that you want to see coaching have on the young people. We've spoken in the past about the challenges of the young people where you are in Barbados. You might want to touch on what they are, but what can coaching do to support the young people? What can it provide them, and what benefits can coaching give the young people that you want to work with?
yeah. So those that I've worked with, I've noticed that they they want to learn. I've never met a young person who doesn't want to learn or want to do better, want to improve. But I think what's happening sometimes is that the way the information is coming at them isn't giving them that isn't motivating. It's not motivating how the information is coming at them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that struggle is because they're having difficulties processing the information, whether it's just the way it's being presented to them, um, whether it's they're not quite understanding how is this relevant, like why do I need to know this, because for some of them that is the question. They flat out come and ask you, why do I need to know this? They ask you that about school, and I'm sure it's not just in Barbados, it's probably all over.
Yes.
Like, why do I need to go to school anyway? I could easily become a YouTuber. You hear them saying things like that, and then what's your response to that?
Mm.
Oh, you need to learn this, but why? You just need to learn it. I don't think that young people these days readily respond to those kinds of answers anymore. So you know, the again, that's one of the influences I see coaching having. I see it answering questions in practical ways for the youngsters. Well, not even answering questions, having them answer the questions and making it come alive for them in their minds. Because again, one of the other things I've noticed is that because they're so information is so accessible now at the push of a button and that kind of thing, it's just there. And the idea, and I noticed this when I was teaching classes online in COVID, during COVID, the COVID shutdowns and so on. Students started to get I started to get the impression that students thought they knew things as long as it was online. So you would give them information, and their idea of knowing it meant, oh yeah, I know where to find it.
Yeah.
Or at least I know where it is. It's in Google Classroom. So that means I know it. And yeah, and so they're thinking it's just different. Like, you ask them certain questions and they kind of stare off into space. And I'm thinking, well, where did you just go? And so they're just, it's just like, how is this relevant? That's what I get from them. You ask them a question and they're like, why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
How is this relevant? And so for me, coaching brings that back. It gets the student to thinking, yeah, why is this relevant? Maybe I need to answer this question for myself. Why would this be relevant to me? Even with adults, because I'm doing some math classes with adults, math proficiency classes, and I was just having a general conversation the first day, and one of the students in the class mentioned Pythagoras theorem. Like, why do we even need to know that? I don't. She couldn't even remember how to pronounce the thing correctly. But why do I even need to know that? So then at the end of the conversation, I said, you know what? By the way, the next time you see a staircase, or the next time at work the place where you work, the next time you see the guys loading a van and they throw up a ramp, that is Pythagoras theorem. And she went, oh, okay. So sometimes we don't make those connections. People aren't allowed or given the space to make those connections, and so things just kind of go off into space. But yeah, for me, coaching, that's one of the big things with coaching, bringing that relevance back, waking up the thinking and the imagination again, and students just basically feeling motivated to learn because this is something I want to learn because I can see how it's relevant.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. I
yeah,
think that's an excellent answer in terms of taking the information that's transmitted by teachers and giving it a point, giving it
yeah,
giving it an importance in young people that without that conversation, it's just information for them to pass a test on. And
right,
like you say, if they're allowed to explore the relevancy for them, how it can be of use to them in the real world, then they're more likely to then take in the information, and then coaching can then be used for them to apply what they learn in a
right.
setting in a setting of solar. A final question, because I think we've probably gone on a little longer than we might have planned, but if you could
Because I,
list maybe 5 or 6 either qualities or skills that young people can get from coaching, what would you say are the most important?
wow. Hmm. Let's see. So, from coaching, I think young people stand to gain. One, they can certainly build leadership skills in coaching, because coaching does give you that chance to manage yourself. It's a lot about self management. They can pick up, and I think a lot of these skills do head in that direction of leadership skills. Leadership skills kind of, I guess, would be the umbrella thing, but certainly in there you can learn to or benefit from emotional intelligence, becoming more aware of yourself, learning how to self-regulate and that kind of thing. You're certainly learning how to plan and prioritize. You're learning how to set goals. You're learning how to break those goals down into smaller parts and achieve them. Achieve that big goal in smaller steps. So coaching does open up a whole window of things and development for those skills that we call soft skills, which are probably in more demand now than the hard skills. Of course, you do need to know the technical, things for your field, whatever that field is. You do need to know those technical things, but but with the way that we're going to school now, everybody's coming out with a degree and this and that and next and the third from a different school. you know by and large the content is the same. So what is it that's going to differentiate one person from another when it comes to the workplace? What is it that's going to differentiate one company from the next? Because you know the computers are all there for everybody to grab and buy one. You can plug it in and get on the network the same way. Everybody can do that. So what's going to differentiate one company from the next? It has to be the team that you have, and that team is built up of people who collaborate. Again, that word collaborate, and people who work together, and all their personalities and how they work together and so on. Those soft skills are what will make the big difference. So coaching, I see coaching being able to help people develop those soft skills that really are what we the 21st century is asking for. It's not, again, it's not only about what you know. It's about what can you do with what you know, and how can you build relationships that you need, to really push this thing forward.
Yep.
It's not just that, oh, I can do this and I can do it by myself. That's not the world we live in anymore. Yeah. So I see coaching how coaching can really help with that.
Many areas beyond knowledge and retaining information that young people are going to need. I agree with you completely that those skills are going to increase in importance as differentiators and keeping yourself relevant as an employee, or make yourself relevant in the work that you develop for yourself as young people. The soft skills, the human skills, what you can do that machines can't do, is going to make all the difference going forward. And that's not at the expense of knowledge, but
no, it's not.
Knowledge itself is not sufficient, as Ken Robbins said. Eldon, it's been a pleasure to speak with you on this first recording. I'm sure it won't be the last. And
yeah, time. Pleasure too. Yeah, man, I enjoyed it.